What happens when we approach weakness the right way? There's 4 lessons that I believe weakness teaches us that some of us need to embrace today. If you're taking notes, write this down. Number 1, weakness trains us to walk in spiritual humility. The Apostle Paul says, therefore, in order to keep me from becoming conceited. What does that word conceited mean? It's the equivalent or synonymous with pride. What is pride or conceit or arrogance? It's the thought that we are better than other people. It's the thought that we are self-sufficient and do not really need God. Pride is this thought that other people are lower than me, that I'm more intellectual, that I have more abilities, that I have more strength, that I am special, that I am self-sufficient, contained, and able to do things that other people can't have because they live at a lower plane. Pride is what causes us to not pray. Pride is what keeps us from saying, I'm sorry. Pride is what takes away our ability to admit that we're wrong. Pride causes us to be critical of others. Pride causes us to be assuming. Pride causes us to not press into God. Pride causes us to have a self-delusional sense of our greatness and power and strength. Pride repels the presence of God. You know, the Bible is very clear. There are a lot of sins and a lot of things that can affect us, but the Bible has strong language about pride. In fact, in James chapter 4, this is what it says: God opposes the proud, but he gives grace to the humble. In other words, God is in opposition to the proud. If you study Scripture, you'll realize that one of God's supreme angels, Lucifer, was a guardian of the glory of God. And it was his desire to touch that glory, his arrogance, his pride, that actually caused him to be cast out of heaven. We now know him as Satan, the devil, the enemy of our souls, but the essence of his fall was pride. Pride compels us to want to touch that which only belongs to God. The honor, the glory, the exaltation. The things that the King of Kings deserves, we want to touch. We want it to be ours. We want to have some of it. We want to take on that which really only belongs to God. We want to rub against it. We want to say that it's ours. We want it to come in our direction. And the Bible is very clear about this, that God opposes the proud, not just that he wants to humble the proud, but he opposes it. If you want to repel God, let pride seep into your soul and your spirit. In fact, I don't think I would be far off if I said the great scourge of our nation, the greatest sin or struggle of this congregation and us as individuals, it's like carbon monoxide. It's almost invisible to the naked eye, but yet it seeps into every one of our souls. It affects us, it pollutes us, it contaminates us. It sometimes goes unperceived because it can camouflage itself sometimes as hyper-spirituality. It can camouflage itself in a lot of different ways, but it is this innocuous, deadly, God-repelling attitude called pride. You say, well, Pastor, I don't think I have a lot of it. It's probably your pride speaking. Give me 5 minutes with your spouse. And when she starts to saying, it's so hard for him to say he's sorry, admit he's wrong, confess to weakness. It's always got to be his way. He always makes everybody feel like he's the one right. Don't be poking them right now because I see you. Do it more discreetly. It's called pride. The Apostle Paul says that God actually did not answer his prayer in order to help him deal with his pride. Notice what it says. Therefore, in order to keep me from becoming conceited, I was given a thorn in my flesh. Now, there's been a lot of debate among theologians and scholars what exactly that phrase means. A thorn in my flesh. At first glance, it may seem like a splinter in your finger that annoys you occasionally when you're grabbing something. You realize, I got a splinter in my finger. But dig a little bit deeper into this passage and into the Greek, and it's the translation thorn is probably not the best translation. Literally, it means a stake. It's the same word that was used when the ancients would set up their tents in the wilderness and drive a stake into the sand so that the wind would not blow their tent down. And usually these stakes were about 18 inches long, a stake. When we're talking about a thorn, we're not talking about a splinter. We're talking about a severe, mega, debilitating, painful, more than likely physical condition that the Apostle Paul was suffering. There's quite a few different theologians and scholars that would argue exactly what it is, but the word is indicating that this is big, that this is severe. In fact, later on he says that this is a messenger of Satan to torment him. In other words, he's experiencing severe pain because of this stake. Most scholars believe that it's probably a physical thing because it calls it a thorn in the flesh, therefore indicating that his physical body was experiencing pain. Some people have speculated that maybe it was chronic eye issues because in another letter he talks about, I'm writing you in big letters, and people thought, well, maybe he has vision problems. Malaria was a major disease during the times of Paul in that region, but it was a certain kind of malaria that would end up in severe, searing migraine headaches that would cause people, one person described it as a stake being driven into their head, a pain so severe that they could no longer function, so debilitating that your body was on the deathbed. Or other people have thought maybe it was epilepsy he was talking about, or a speech disability. There's a lot of conjecture, but ultimately the Bible doesn't tell us what it is. And when the Bible is not clear about it, it's because it's not important to the point. The point is that the Apostle Paul was experiencing severe physical pain, disease, ailment, so much so that he uses the word being tormented, or literally in the Greek it means beaten up, black and blue, severely boxed over because of this ailment. We also notice that this ailment was not just a physical thing, but this ailment had multiple dimensions to it. It's physical because he calls it thorn in the flesh. It's spiritual because he calls it a messenger of Satan. And it's emotional because he is begging God to take it away. Can I just mention to you that most of those tools that cause us to be weak typically spill over into the multidimensional facet of who we are? The Bible tells us in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 that we be sanctified through and through, and he says your whole body, your soul, and your spirit. Some people call it the trichotomy of man, that you are composed of a body. That is that physical part of you that you get up and you watch in the mirror. You see, that's what we know, what I'm looking at right now, that's your body. And we all know that, well, some of you are here today and you're in severe pain. There's some of you that are sick. I just prayed for someone at our early service that has severe cancer in his body, and tomorrow he'll be in a major operation where they're removing several organs of his body because of his cancer. Some of you, your age itself has caused you to be multiple aches and pains. You're at a stage where you bend down to tie your shoe and you ask yourself, is there anything else I need to do while I'm down here? Some of you know what I'm talking about. You're at that point. And anybody who's lived with a severe pain, a backache, migraine headaches, or any other kind of debilitating disease, you know that it affects you deeply, and it's easy for the physical pain to actually spill over to your soul, which your soul is your mind, your intellect, and your will, that essence of that makes you who you are. And it's easy if you're struggling with something physically, if you're struggling right now physically, it's easy for it to drag you down into the pit of discouragement, depression, the pit of I can't go forward, the pit of what's tomorrow gonna be like. And it's people that struggle physically severely oftentimes battle also with depression of their soul and trying to keep themselves encouraged to be able to just survive through the day. And that also has a string on our spirit, and it can drag us spiritually down to a place where we start asking, God, are you there? It's hard for me to have joy, hard for me to read scripture because I'm in physical pain, I'm in soul depression, and I'm in spiritual discouragement. It's like those climbers that we see trying to make their way to the summit of Mount Everest. And the climbers are connected together by a rope, and when one climber falls, it pulls the other climber, that pulls the other climber. Your body, your soul, and your spirit are interconnected together, and all of them are important to God, and all of them affect who you are and how you function. The Apostle Paul says that he was suffering with a thorn in the flesh that was a messenger of Satan that was tormenting him. The ultimate purpose, though, don't miss it, because I want you to understand that the aim of the thorn is more important than the name of the thorn. The aim of the thorn was to keep him in a place of weakness so that he would not become proud or conceited. Let me say that again. Sometimes God allows us to experience deep weakness in our soul, our body, our spirit, in order that we would not become proud, conceited, prayerless. In order that we wouldn't think I can do this on my own, I don't need help from on high. Can I tell you something today? Look at me, this is really important. Every single one of us here that dwells in a mortal body, we are extremely vulnerable. We all have our weakness. I have seen men that were robust and strong and able and confident and benching 250 pounds, and I've seen them a week later after suffering a stroke and they had to be cared for 24 hours a day. All of us live either on the brink of weakness or live in the midst of weakness. To think that we are strong and do not need the help of God is the ultimate delusion. And God, the Apostle Paul acknowledges that with all his revelation and strength and personality and power and what he was doing, that God gave him a thorn in the flesh, allowed a thorn in the flesh specifically so that he would not become proud or conceited.